What if I were to tell you, even if you've personally never been prescribed an opioid medication, if you live in the US, you're being affected by the current opioid epidemic going on in this country? Codeine, fentanyl, morphine, Oxycontin, Dilaudid, and Percocet are a few of the medications responsible for this epidemic. The physical effects are devastating, but the negative effects can be seen throughout communities. I've been a paramedic for 3 years. In 3 years, I was able to pull my stats. I've run 730 calls. Out of those 730 calls, Narcan was administered 68 times. That means on average, 1 in 10 calls, I'm giving Narcan. Whatever your opinion is on this current crisis, a solution needs to be found before more Americans die and countless others are affected without even taking the drug. I'd like to start off with some facts about the opioid crisis. The US population makes up about 5% of the world, but yet we consume around 80% of the world's prescribed opioid medications. The National Institute on Drug Abuse estimates around 2 million Americans abuse opioids. Around 130 people die in the US every single day from opioid overdose. The CDC estimates around $78.5 billion as the yearly cost for the US for opioid crisis. There's no discriminating factors for addiction, but there are some factors that may increase your chance of addiction, such as poverty, unemployment, history of substance abuse, criminal activity, mental illness, or heavy tobacco use. Whether or not you or someone you personally know has been affected by opioid addiction, the negative repercussions can be seen and felt throughout society. The effect that's personal to me is increased wait times at hospitals or EMS services due to an increased need in treatment for opioid users. There's also an increase in HIV and Hep C among users, which can easily be spread throughout communities. Increase in mental health problems in users, families, and even medical providers due to the repeated exposure of addiction and the consequences it may have. There's also an increase in divorce rates in single-parent homes, and unfortunately an increased chance of neglect or abuse in your personal life. There's also the chance of financial burden on users, family, and communities. It's not cheap to pay for medical treatment, addiction treatment, criminal justice involvement, or even funeral costs. If you live in the United States, this is affecting you personally, whether you use or not. Were you surprised to see how close home this may hit for some? This epidemic is killing thousands of Americans every single year. Addiction does not discriminate, but there are some factors to be aware of. If you live in the United States, you are being affected by this epidemic. Anyone suffering from addiction, please don't hesitate to seek help.